Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Michael DiTolla, the Director of Clinical Affairs at Sirona Dental, and we're happy to bring you this Sirona Media Panel. We're coming to you live from the floor of the 2016 Chicago Midwinter Convention, and to my left, Dr. Bob Margeas. Bob, how you doing?
Great, Mike. Good
Bob's
to see you.
owned a CEREC one since 1990. Never upgraded it once, but still, thank you for being there very early on and sticking with the technology. To his left, Mr. Tony Angelini from Aegis Media. You guys have Compendium, Inside Dentistry. What else? I know there's a couple more.
Inside Dental Technology.
Inside Dental Technology. I do read that one. How did I forget about that after 15 years in the lab business? That's a great journal as well.
Thank you.
And to your left, Dr. Clark Brown. Clark, how you doing?
Great.
Melbourne, Florida. Thank you for being on some of these panels with us as well. And with that, Tony, I'm going to turn it over to you because you guys are actually prepared. I see some questions in front of both of you, and I'm going to let you run this show from this point on.
Dr. DiTolla, it's all about preparation.
Yes, it is. And impressions.
Yes.
But
So first of all, I want to thank Sirona. I want to thank yourself,
Sure.
Dr. Brown, for having Aegis Communications be part of this panel. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Margeas, for helping me out.
Always.
Just a few questions, and then I want to turn it over to Dr. Margeas for a few clinical questions. But first wanted to ask regarding the merger. Last month, both the Dentsply and the Sirona shareholders voted yes for the merger, which, congratulations, it's going to create a very powerful, influential entity. So just wanted to know when could the dental community expect to see some branding, some of the messaging from the new entity?
Well, we just cleared the last hurdle of the regulatory approval in Europe yesterday morning. And so it looks like the merger will actually finally formalize probably Monday, maybe Tuesday morning at the latest. As far as the branding, that's still going to take a little bit of time after that. But when you look at what we do as a technology and equipment company, to be able to come together like that in a merger with essentially a materials company, every dentist, wouldn't you say, has at least one Dentsply product?
Sure.
Maybe 3 or 4. In their practice, and I see it as a great coming together of an equipment leader and a consumables leader, and it's going to we're certainly excited because it's going to give us the opportunity to play in a lot of areas that we haven't before, and hopefully integrate those technologies with us. But as you might imagine, the logo itself probably took 185 different ones just to come to that. But I think Monday, Tuesday, early next week, you'll start to see signs of that coming up.
And then I guess at that point, start developing strategies of the rollout.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So it's a lot of integration, as you might imagine. Yeah.
Another question I had was, as you integrate the two companies for greater market penetration in both digital and lab, how do you see the CEREC in-lab and the dentistry Dentsply's lab portfolio evolving?
Well, I ran away from the lab industry to come to the chairside industry, but we can see it changing for the lab because obviously when we introduce something like the solid zirconia, the CEREC zirconia that we introduced today, that gives dentists the opportunity to do more in their offices. A restoration that traditionally had to be sent out to the dental laboratory to be done. But at the same time, that same equipment and the same technology allows dental laboratories to start doing things themselves that they were outsourcing to other laboratories as well. My personal view or vision is that much like Bob and I as GPs work with endodontists and oral surgeons and other specialists for difficult cases, that the lab's going to be able to use this technology and is going to become more of a specialist, if you will. And so as time goes on, we fully expect to see dentists doing more of the routine single-unit posterior crowns in their office, and the dental laboratory truly becoming a specialist dealing with the more difficult cases, the large bridges, anterior veneers, single-unit or two-unit anterior crowns, real aesthetic challenges. And so much like it stands now where specialists, whether they're orthodontists or periodontists, make very good livings, even though GPs still do a lot of that. In fact, they probably benefit because GPs will diagnose more once they're starting to do the easy cases in their own office. So we hope to continue to see a growth for the lab industry as well. That said, they're not going anywhere. And even though you make a lot of restorations in your office, there's just times where you need your dental lab to help you through it because of the complexity of the case.
No doubt. It's a good transition into my next question regarding about a year ago, I think the model for Sirona was CAD-CAM for everyone, which certainly made sense. You had CEREC BlueCam, CEREC OmniCam, you have the software, you have the Connect portal. But my question is, at what point do you think the general practice could really go digital for all of their services? How steep is the learning curve? How long would it take an average dentist to become truly proficient?
Right. Well, I actually think that the CAD cam for everyone was the introduction of a couple different price points. As it turns out, most of the dentists who got involved with this technology still bought the top of the line system, the one that could do the most and let them do the most. And so those more affordable systems really kind of never caught on. And so when dentists got involved with this technology, they wanted to be able to use it for all its potential indications.
Sure.
I really think the solid zirconia is going to go a long way towards making it easy enough where every dentist will say, okay, I can do that. For example, before solid zirconia was made for chairside, the strongest crown that we've seen in dentistry, solid zirconia, still had to be done through your lab. So if you wanted to get involved with CAD-CAM technology, you had to change your preparations. If you were doing PFMs, all of a sudden you had to start putting deeper champers on for some of these glass ceramics. You had to make sure you had enough reduction. You had to learn how to bond well as opposed to cementing. And so coming into the CAD-CAM arena did force you to do some things that you weren't doing before. Now, with the introduction of chairside solid zirconia, you can do everything exactly as you've been doing it. This material is very forgiving. And Bob, as a dentist, when you look at one of these unsintered milled restorations, if you flip it over, we've never been able to get thin margins like that before in these restorations. So a dentist who's not maybe having a great day or has an uncooperative patient and is prepping a crown and leaves some feather edge margins, they would typically get a call from the lab saying we can't do that. With zirconia, you can actually do that and do it chairside. So this is a big leveling, I think, of CAD-CAM, because it allows you to cement restorations, prep more conservatively, and you can have feather edge margins as well. So for me, this is really the first big thing that I've seen that has made it something that every dentist out there, and I call myself an average dentist all the time, so I'm not being insulting to other average dentists, is that the average dentist now can bring this system and know they don't have to get better or do better preps to be able to utilize this chairside CAD-CAM because of solid zirconia. So I actually think this is more of a game changer, this material, than any of the equipment that has come out before.
I understand. So the transition is going to be a little bit easier because of the material.
It's going to be a lot easier, because you're not going to have to get better, and to be able to utilize this technology.
Okay. Bob, you had a few questions?
Having had CAD, I had the CEREC 1 back in 1990. And the technology has really evolved.
Yeah.
Back then, we had to do all the designing ourselves. It was very complex, XY axis. But I had thousands of restorations placed. And in fact, I've got the oldest CEREC probably here at the Midwinter. I had mine placed in 1990. It's 26 years old.
Wow.
And
I've got a ceremony for it later.
And I've got a lot of wear on my teeth.
I saw you have a lot of wear on your teeth.
And the inlay's still in there.
It's stressful being a dentist. I get it.
Is.
My cuspids are flat too.
They are. And at that time, I really didn't have the staff that was able to design and mill it out. I was doing it myself. So as a private practitioner, if we have to design and mill and stain, that it's really not as productive for somebody like me if you have one dental assistant. What role can the staff play, and what role can the dental staff play in the dental CAD-CAM process, and can they be trained well?
Well, Clark, I'm going to toss that one to you, just because you've been a trainer and you teach a lot of courses and do basic training. What do you think the role of the staff is in a CAD-CAM practice?
And a lot of times, the staff will come to the trainings. Basically, Sirona's made the software so easy that training is almost effortless. The dentist needs to prep the tooth. In most cases, take the image, which is essentially the final impression. At that point, the staff can design, send it to the mill, automatically then send it to the sintering oven, have everything ready to go, stained and glazed, and then the dentist just needs to come back in. Assistant says, I'm mixing the cement, puts it in, dentist seats it, he walks out, done. So the staff can play a tremendous role, and it really is relatively easy to train the staff how to do it. Unlike when you were doing CEREC 1, the software now is effortless. You don't have to draw little lines or anything like that. And now with the new software, I've found that when I hit to design, I don't have to do anything else. The design is flawless 90% of the time right then. I can just go straight to mill and mill it and have a restoration that fits perfectly, particularly with zirconia. It's going to fit perfectly. I don't have to do any occlusal adjustments on it. I don't get any post-op sensitivity with it. absolutely tremendous.
And it's funny because I think some dentists feel like, well, my staff is not good enough, to be able to designing or making crowns. Like, you have to have some special training. But the reality is, at the lab, we were hiring people right off the streets. All they had to have was not be afraid of a computer.
Right.
And they could sit down and they would learn within 60 to 90 days how to design crowns. And unlike their dental assistants, they had no dental background whatsoever. They were literally hired right off the street. So when dentists tell me, I don't think my staff can do this, I know for a fact their staff can do this and should be involved with all of those steps that aren't where the dentist isn't required by law or by the Practice Act to be doing.
Right. And with a lot of the training I do, I can tell you that most of the time, the assistants do a better job of it than the dentists do.
It's amazing.
Nice.
Well, there you go.
Are there any situations where you wouldn't use CEREC?
Well, there used to be, you used to have to say yes a lot more because you didn't have a really high strength material. So the zirconia is not intended to replace any of the other glass ceramics like Emax or Celtra. I think, rational practitioner will have a range of materials from the highly aesthetic, weaker materials that need to be bonded to a very strong one that can be cemented and used on molars and is indicated for use in people who are bruxers and grinders. Are there any areas? Yeah, I still think for, and you can chime in too, Clark, but really deep subgingival crowns, for example, where you're replacing an old crown and you're not doing crown lengthening, the scanners are all kind of line of sight, and so they have a hard time getting down a couple millimeters subgingival if you're replacing something like that. You don't throw your polyvinyl and polyether away just because you're taking primarily digital.
Though I will tell you, particularly like with the Ceralays or any of the diode lasers, I can get that area dry, and I don't have any trouble getting in those areas. As far as CEREC, really, from my personal standpoint, I don't really think that there's any. I haven't used polyvinyl for a very, very, very long time. I've used CEREC for everything. Now, do I do everything in the office? No, but I can image and send to the lab with CEREC Connect. Right. So I still have that advantage. And even with CEREC Connect, the laboratory can get the information before that patient's even out of the chair and comment on it. I agree. I mean, until I had a laser in the office, there would be areas where, yes, it was too deep and a problem. But
the truth is, as Bob asked me that question, I realized I was just about part of a company that owned Aquasil now. So I was like having to stick up for that a little too. And that is what is going to be one of those interesting things about saying, hey, you never need impression material again, to, oh, by the way, look what our company does now. We also sell this. Yeah. But Clark's committed.
I think the game changer. I think the game changer of all this too, though, is really, as you said, the zirconia, being able to mill it and sinter it and stain it. You got to have the fastest oven, I'm sure, right now, right, on the market?
Yes.
And being able to stain it and glaze it and be able to cement it.
In the same oven.
Yeah.
In a lab, it's done by two different ovens, and that's what dentists used to have. And the great thing is there's no controls on the oven. So it doesn't, a lot of the times dentists say, I don't want to be a lab tech. They don't want to have to learn all these different programs and cycles. It's controlled by the software. The software knows how big the crown is, how thick it is, and what shade it is, and comes up with a custom sinter time for that crown, sends it to the sinter oven, and you set it in there on the occlusal surface, and in 12 minutes it comes down and cools off, and then you can put any kind of staining you want on the cervical, and then use just the spray glaze and hit it, put it on a peg with some speed paste, and 9 minutes, run it up again. This bridge, a solid zirconia bridge, was sintered in 22 minutes. Clark's done like 4 of these bridges in his practice. They're all sintering in 22 to 24 minutes.
Nice.
Pretty amazing you can make something like that quickly chairside. It's going from the CEREC one that did primarily inlays and onlays, just being able to go to full crowns, and now being able to go to a high strength all ceramic, the strongest crown we have short of cast gold, and do it chairside. It's amazing.
I really, even with some of them some of the fixed bridges that I've done with the zirconia, single visit. So I still have that. They're sitting in the chair a little bit longer, but you can still do 3-unit bridges single visit. Yeah. Which is tremendous.
And we've got like one question left. Not to rush you, but
go ahead, Tony.
Well, one left.
Okay.
I'd love to ask a question about CirroWorld.
Sure.
Certainly, Sirona, through their technologies and their success, have really developed a very strong community of followers and believers, and you would have to believe that CirroWorld will only enhance that interaction, share of ideas. Can you give our readers a bit of an update on CirroWorld, and who will some of the leaders, some of the clinicians that will spearhead that initiative?
It's amazing because the passion that's grown around, you see that passion in a couple different areas, like Apple releases an iPhone. There's lines, around the block of people waiting to give $800 to Apple and buy this technology. And I don't think you can force a community like that. And it hasn't happened like that with Sirona. They've just turned out some great products, and then the people have come. They got passionate. Dentists like Clark and others who would meet. You see this grassroots community spring up, CEREC doctors, and from the first meeting, it's grown and grown and grown exponentially. It went from every 5 years to every 2.5 years, and that didn't seem like it was enough for the community either. So it became every year, and that's the idea behind CereWorld, is to acknowledge. We're not going to ignore the huge CEREC technology that kind of started this whole thing, but the name CereWorld kind of refers to the other technologies, whether it's the imaging or the treatment centers, or now with Dentsply coming on board, that this whole Sirona world is going to encompass a lot more than that. So we want to make it not just a digital CAD/CAM meeting anymore, but there's going to be tracks for operative dentistry, orthodontics, endodontics, and you can expect that the leaders in all of those, the top 2 or 3 lecturers that you would want to see in each of those categories will be there. Our goal is to make it, if a GP only or a dentist only goes to 1 meeting that year, this would be it, because they can pick and choose from any of these different tracks. And much like it, CEREC 27.5 or CEREC 30, top-notch entertainment to go along with that. CEREC 30 had Tony Robbins, who had 4,000 dentists standing up, clapping and dancing and holding hands with each other. I'm never going to try to get dentists to do that because it seems like an impossible task. Train was there and played and put on an amazing show. And so Sirona's always had this commitment to putting together the best in education and the best in entertainment to make sure that there are meetings that people don't forget. And hopefully they start to schedule their year around it and say, okay, well, this is when CEREC 30 was, this is when CereWorld is, and so we'll schedule around it. So the other request we got from dentists, besides having it every year, was alternating coasts. And so the dentists on the East Coast, and 2/3 of them, as you guys know, are east of the Mississippi. Sure. And as a result, they were like, well, what about us? We're always going out to Las Vegas. And so the decision was made to have this next one in Orlando.
So you rotate.
So the plan is to rotate back and forth between East Coast and West Coast, if you consider Las Vegas the West Coast. And so it's August 11th to the 13th, 2016 in Orlando, Florida. It's at the Rosen Shingle Creek Resort, and rented out the entire thing. Nothing but dentists, nothing but Sirona, Patterson, dentists, CEREC people in this hotel. We're going to take it over. It's going to be martial law. None of the rules of Florida will apply because we'll have our own sovereign little nation there.
That's great.
I may be lying about that. But it's going to be an amazing time. We'd love to have you guys out there and get a chance to come. We'd love to have you come on stage and show off your CEREC 1 restoration that's still doing strong in your teeth, even though it's had all the wear and tear of the grinding.
Yeah. That's right.
Bob, thank you so much. We never get a chance to talk
enough.
Tony, neither do
Good
you
luck
and
with
I.
CereWorld. Great idea.
Thank you. We hope to have you out there.
Time. Very good.
And thank you guys for watching this panel. We'd like to thank you for your time and your continued commitment to quality dentistry.